People think you're lazy, antisocial, afraid of life. But what if the real reason you struggle to leave the house has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with who you really are? What if going outside costs you more energy than most people will ever understand? You're not broken. You were never broken. But you've probably asked yourself this question more times than you can count. Why does something so simple feel so heavy? Why does getting ready to leave the house drain you before you've even stepped outside? Why does your body hesitate, your energy drop, your spirit resist even when there's no clear reason to stay in? And with that question comes guilt, confusion, a quiet pressure to explain yourself to a world that doesn't feel what you feel. You wonder if something is wrong with you, if you're becoming lazy, if you're falling behind, if you're missing out on life while everyone else seems to move so easily through it. But listen carefully. This has nothing to do with social anxiety, nothing to do with weakness, nothing to do with a lack of ambition or drive. What you experience is not a flaw, it's a difference. Chosen ones do not experience the world the way others do. You don't just walk into environments, you feel them. You don't just hear conversations. You sense what's underneath them. You don't simply exist in spaces. You absorb their weight, their tension, their unspoken energy, and that changes everything. Your home to you has never been just an address. It's a sanctuary, a filter, a place where your soul finally exhales. When the door closes behind you, something inside you quiets down, the noise softens. Your spirit stops bracing itself. Your intuition can breathe again. And this is the part most people will never understand. Your need to stay in is not avoidance. It's alignment. It's preservation. It's preparation. In this video, you're going to understand the real spiritual reason why leaving the house feels so difficult for chosen ones. Not in a surface-level way, but in a deep, revealing way that connects patterns you've felt your entire life, but never had words for. By the end, you won't feel confused about yourself anymore. You'll feel seen, grounded, and prepared for what's coming next. Before we go deeper, pause for a moment. If this already feels like it's speaking directly to you, like this isn't random, like you were meant to hear this today, show that alignment. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and comment 99 below. Not as a number, but as a signal that you're aware, that you're present, that you're ready to receive what most people never notice. There is something happening inside you that most people will never have language for. And because they can't name it, they misjudge it. They assume you feel too much because you're fragile. They assume you withdraw because you're afraid. But the truth is far more unsettling than that. You are not sensitive in the way the world defines sensitivity. You are receptive. You are tuned in. You are open in places others don't even know exist. Chosen ones move through life with their internal channels wide open. You don't just register what is said. You pick up what is hidden. You don't only notice expressions. You feel what people are carrying behind their eyes. Every room you enter speaks to you before anyone opens their mouth. Every space has a temperature that isn't physical, and every interaction leaves a residue that follows you longer than it should. This is where the misunderstanding begins. When most people walk into a crowded place, they experience stimulation, noise, movement, social energy. To them, it's neutral or even exciting. To you, it's weight, it's pressure. It's like stepping into multiple emotional climates at once, all competing for your attention. Conversations overlap, intentions clash. Unresolved emotions linger in the air, and your system tries to process all of it at the same time. And here's the key difference. Others filter automatically. You don't. Others can tune out what doesn't concern them. You can't. Their awareness moves in a straight line. Yours expands in every direction. While they are present on the surface, you are present underneath. While they occupy space, you scan it. While they exist, you interpret. This is why certain places exhaust you within minutes, while others can stay there for hours without feeling anything at all. It's not stamina, it's exposure. You are taking in far more data than the human system was designed to casually carry. Emotional undertones, energetic shifts, subtle power dynamics, unspoken tension. Your spirit reads before your mind can catch up. And somewhere along the way, you may have been told this was anxiety, that you were overthinking, that you needed to relax, toughen up, stop being so intense. But anxiety comes from fear. What you experience comes from awareness. Anxiety imagines threats that aren't there. You sense what already is. There's a profound difference between the two, and confusing them has caused many chosen ones to doubt themselves for years. This sensitivity didn't appear by accident. It's not random. It's not a malfunction. It's a form of perception that was never meant to operate constantly in loud, crowded, misaligned environments. You were built to notice what others miss, to feel shifts before they happen, to read between moments, not just moments themselves. This is why leaving the house costs you energy before anything even happens. Because the moment you prepare to step outside, your system anticipates what's coming. It knows it will have to stay alert. It knows it will have to protect, interpret, adjust, and absorb. While others simply go out, you gear up. While others spend energy doing, you spend energy perceiving. And here's the realization that quietly changes everything. You don't avoid the world because you're weak. You retreat because you are constantly exposed, because your awareness doesn't shut off at the door. Because every outing asks you to give more than most people ever notice they're taking. While others move through the world, you read it, and reading the world comes at a cost that explains far more than you've ever been told. And what makes this even more intense is that this sensitivity is only the first layer. Because once you understand what you perceive, you begin to realize something else. You're not just sensitive to environments. You're sensitive to timing, to alignment, to danger, and that awareness is about to reveal something even deeper. There's a reason the outside world feels overwhelming to you, even on days when it's quiet, even in places where nothing dramatic is happening. It's because silence for you is never empty. A room can be calm on the surface and still scream underneath, and your system hears that screaming instantly. What drains you isn't sound, it isn't crowds alone. It's energetic noise, the kind that doesn't register on the senses most people rely on. Intentions that are never spoken, emotional residue left behind by conversations that ended badly, tension that lingers in the air long after the people who created it have moved on. Hidden motives disguised as friendliness, smiles that don't match the frequency behind them. All of that exists whether people acknowledge it or not. The difference is you can't not feel it. Most people move through environments sealed off. Their attention is narrow, their awareness selective. They only engage with what directly demands a response. But you walk in with your field open. You receive everything, the mood of the space, the emotional state of strangers, the subtle power plays happening beneath casual interactions. And because none of this is visible, no one realizes how much you're carrying. This is why a short outing can leave you exhausted for hours, sometimes days. Not because you did too much, but because you absorbed too much. Your body might have been sitting still, but your system was working non-stop, sorting through signals, filtering emotional static, protecting your inner balance while remaining outwardly functional. It's invisible labor, and invisible labor is the most draining kind. You might have noticed how quickly this happens. You step into a place, and within minutes your energy shifts. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing changes, your focus narrows, something in you goes into alert mode. Not panic, not fear. Awareness like an internal switch flipping on without asking for permission. And once it's on, it doesn't turn off until you're safe again. This is where the metaphor matters. You are walking through the world with invisible antennas that never shut down. They're always scanning, always receiving, always translating information that most people are completely blind to. And while that gives you extraordinary discernment, it also means you are constantly exposed to interference. Too many signals, too many frequencies crossing at once, and the outside world is saturated with that interference. People rarely process what they feel. They carry unresolved emotions everywhere they go. Stress, resentment, desire, frustration. None of it disappears just because they enter a new room. It leaks, it spreads, it accumulates. And you, without trying, become aware of it. You don't choose to tune in. You simply are. This is why your house feels different. The moment you step inside, the door closes, and your system knows. The antennas soften, the scanning slows, your nervous system finally releases its grip. Your spirit stops bracing for impact. It's not psychological comfort. It's energetic alignment. The space recognizes you. And for the first time in hours, sometimes days, nothing is demanding your awareness. Your home functions as a recharging station because it's one of the few places where your field isn't constantly being invaded. The energy is familiar, the atmosphere stable, the signals predictable. You're no longer sorting through other people's emotional debris. You're no longer compensating for environments that don't match your frequency. You're simply returning to yourself. This is the shift most people get wrong. You don't hate people. You don't dislike connection. You don't want to disappear from the world. What you resist is overload. What you avoid is constant energetic interference. What you protect yourself from is the slow erosion that happens when you stay too long in spaces that were never designed for someone as receptive as you. And here's the part that should make you pause. If brief exposure can drain you this deeply, imagine what prolonged exposure would do. Imagine what would happen if you ignored this signal entirely. That question matters. Because this sensitivity isn't just about comfort, it's about survival. And the reason your system reacts so strongly might be pointing to something far more intentional than you've ever considered. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one when something irreversible happens. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or announcements. It comes quietly, a subtle internal shift, a click you can't undo. And once it happens, the way you experience people, places, and conversations is permanently altered. This is awakening, and awakening is a point of no return. Before this shift, you could blend in. You could tolerate environments that didn't nourish you. You could sit through conversations that didn't resonate and tell yourself it was normal. You could shrink your awareness just enough to function. But after awakening, that ability disappears, not because you choose to change, but because you can no longer unsee what you now see. Suddenly, conversations that once filled time start to feel hollow. Words are exchanged, laughter happens, but something essential is missing. There is no depth, no presence, no truth underneath the surface. And while others seem satisfied with the exchange, you leave feeling strangely empty. Like you just spent energy without receiving anything real in return. Environments begin to feel tighter. Rooms that once felt neutral now feel heavy, compressed, almost claustrophobic. Not physically, but energetically. You feel boxed in by unspoken rules, social masks, expectations to perform a version of yourself that no longer exists. The air itself feels thick, and the longer you stay, the more your spirit signals that something is wrong. People you once felt close to begin to feel distant, even when they're standing right in front of you. Not because they changed, but because you did, or more accurately, because you remembered who you were. Their patterns repeat. Their perspectives remain fixed. Their conversations orbit the same topics, the same complaints, the same distractions. And you realize with a mix of sadness and clarity that you're no longer moving at the same frequency. This is where confusion sets in. You don't feel superior. You don't feel better than anyone. In fact, you often feel worse because you miss the ease of connection. You miss the simplicity of belonging without effort. But what you're experiencing isn't arrogance. It's alignment, or rather misalignment, frequency mismatch. When two instruments are no longer tuned to the same key, forcing them to play together doesn't create harmony. It creates distortion. And that distortion is what you feel when you stay too long in spaces that no longer match who you're becoming. Your system reacts because it's trying to protect the integrity of your inner state. The painful part is that there are no clean explanations for this. You can't easily tell someone, "I've outgrown this space," without sounding cold. You can't say, "I don't resonate with you anymore," without hurting feelings. So you carry the discomfort silently, you pull back gradually, you make excuses, you create distance without closure, and that quiet drifting can feel like grief because you're not just losing people. You're losing versions of yourself, versions that belonged in those environments, versions that fit into those conversations, and letting them go feels like letting go of safety, even when you know you can't go back. This is where the deepest truth begins to surface. The more you see, the harder it becomes to pretend. You can't fake interest where there is none. You can't unnotice manipulation once you recognize it. You can't laugh at what no longer feels true. Pretending starts to feel physically uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that no longer fit your body, and this creates urgency inside you, a quiet but constant pressure to choose authenticity over comfort, to honor your awareness even when it isolates you, to accept that some doors close not because you failed, but because you evolved beyond them. This awakening doesn't just change who you can be around. It changes where you can exist without friction, and that realization leads to an even deeper understanding, because once you recognize misalignment, you begin to sense something else. There are places you avoid not because they're empty, but because they're unsafe for who you're becoming. And that awareness carries a warning most people never hear. There is a reason your mind feels tired even on days when you haven't done much, and it has nothing to do with productivity. Your exhaustion doesn't come from action. It comes from processing. The mind of a chosen one does not move in straight lines, it moves in layers. While others experience moments one at a time, your awareness is constantly weaving connections between what is happening, what has happened before, and what is likely to happen next. Your mind is always reading patterns, not consciously, not as a decision, but as a function. You notice shifts in tone before words change. You sense inconsistencies before they surface. You pick up on rhythms in behavior, emotional loops, repeating cycles. Even when you're quiet, even when you're still, something in you is listening, tracking, decoding. This is not overthinking. It's an intuitive intelligence that never truly powers down. For most people, awareness is optional. They engage it when necessary and disengage when it's inconvenient. For you, it's constant. Your perception doesn't wait for permission. It scans environments automatically, searching for coherence or threat, alignment or distortion. This hyper-awareness is not a flaw. It's a survival mechanism, a form of discernment designed to keep you ahead of what others only recognize after damage is done. And because of that, being outside triggers a specific internal state. The moment you step into unfamiliar or unpredictable environments, your mind shifts into vigilance, not fear-based vigilance, but spiritual alertness. It begins to monitor energy exchanges. It tracks emotional currents. It watches for subtle warning signs most people ignore. Who is safe, what is genuine, where tension might surface. Your mind becomes a quiet guardian standing between your inner world and everything that could disrupt it. This is why social exposure feels mentally taxing even when nothing goes wrong. Your mind isn't resting, it's protecting, it's filtering. It's compensating for environments that lack clarity or emotional honesty. And the longer you stay in that state, the more energy it consumes. You may leave a place physically unharmed but mentally drained, unable to explain why you feel so heavy afterward. Home changes this completely. The moment you return, something subtle happens. Your mind loosens its grip. The constant scanning slows. The internal radar lowers its sensitivity, not because you stop being aware, but because you no longer need to defend your awareness. The space is known, the energy predictable, the signals familiar. For once, your mind doesn't have to anticipate disruption. This is where the misunderstanding runs deepest. People assume staying home means hiding, avoiding life, retreating from responsibility. But for you, staying home is not escape, it's preservation. It's the only place where your mind is allowed to exist without armor, where it doesn't have to interpret every gesture or prepare for every emotional shift, where it can simply be. Home is where your mind doesn't have to protect you, And that sentence carries more truth than most will ever grasp, because when your mind is always in protection mode, it never fully recovers over time. That leads to exhaustion, numbness, or disconnection. Choosing environments where your mind can soften is not withdrawal, it's intelligence, it's self-respect. It's understanding how your system actually works. This also explains why forcing yourself to be out more rarely fixes anything. The more you override your internal signals, the louder they become. The tension increases, the fatigue deepens. Your mind isn't asking for isolation, it's asking for safety. It's asking for spaces where vigilance isn't required. And here's the critical realization. A mind like yours wasn't designed to remain in defense forever. It was designed to protect during preparation, which means this phase has a purpose beyond rest. Because when a chosen one finally leaves safety, it's not to survive, it's to lead. And that transition only happens when the mind has been allowed to recover its strength. There is a pattern that repeats itself in every true transformation, and almost no one recognizes it while they are inside of it. Before expansion, there is withdrawal. Before visibility, there is concealment. Before movement, there is stillness. And for chosen ones, this pattern is not optional. It is built into the design. Isolation was never meant to feel comfortable. If it did, you would mistake it for an ending. Instead, it feels confusing, heavy, sometimes lonely, sometimes pointless. You look at your life from the outside and wonder why everything seems paused while others appear to be accelerating. You question your timing, you question your direction, you question yourself, but what you are experiencing is not stagnation. It is incubation. Nothing that carries power is released immediately. Everything that grows strong grows hidden first. Seeds don't develop in the open. They break open underground where no one can see what's happening, where pressure builds quietly, where transformation happens without applause. That's exactly what this season is doing to you. Isolation is not a failure phase. It is a recalibration phase, a stripping away of noise so that what is essential can surface. When you are pulled inward, distractions fall off. External expectations lose their grip. You stop performing, you stop explaining, you stop negotiating your inner truth just to remain connected to spaces that no longer nourish you. In the quiet, what is real becomes undeniable. This is where the deepest work happens. Not when you are busy, not when you are surrounded, but when you are alone enough to hear yourself clearly. Old wounds rise to be processed instead of suppressed. Patterns you avoided become visible. Intuition sharpens because it's no longer competing with constant stimulation. Healing doesn't announce itself loudly. It unfolds in silence, and clarity comes the same way, not as sudden answers, but as subtle realignments. You start noticing what no longer fits without having to force conclusions. You feel drawn away from certain paths without needing dramatic reasons. The confusion that once felt overwhelming begins to organize itself. Pieces fall into place not because you chased them, but because you finally gave them space. This inward pull is not asking you to disappear forever. It's asking you to listen long enough to remember who you are without interference, to restore your energy, to strengthen your discernment, to reconnect with your inner authority instead of outsourcing it to environments that never truly understood you. And here's what matters most: this season has a limit. It is temporary by design. The same force that pulls you inward will one day push you forward, but not before you are ready, not before your vision stabilizes, not before your nervous system trusts itself again, not before your spirit regains its strength. You are not late. You are not stuck. You are being prepared in ways that don't make sense from the outside. The stillness you're in is doing work you can't yet measure. And one day, without warning, the internal tension will shift, the heaviness will lift, the hesitation will dissolve. There will be a moment when the call changes from stay to go. There is one truth that ties everything you felt together, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. The world doesn't react to you because of what you say. It reacts to you because of what you carry. Your presence speaks before your mouth ever opens. Your energy enters rooms ahead of your body, and whether people understand it or not, something in them responds. Some feel drawn, some feel exposed, some feel uncomfortable without knowing why. That reaction was never your imagination, it was recognition. This is why being at home feels safer than anywhere else. Not because you're afraid of the world, but because your light doesn't have to be filtered there. You don't have to dim it. You don't have to compress it. You don't have to guard it from misunderstanding or resistance. At home, your energy rests at its natural volume. Your spirit stands upright. Your awareness expands without friction. And hear this clearly, because this is where many people get lost. You are not hiding. You are not retreating. You are not wasting your life in silence. You are being built in layers, built in depth, built away from noise so your foundation doesn't crack under pressure. What looks like absence from the outside is actually concentration on the inside. What feels like delay is alignment. What others mistake for isolation is precision. Because when the moment comes, you will not step back into the world to blend in. You will step forward to shift something. You won't go out seeking approval. You'll go out carrying direction. You won't need to force your voice. Your presence will do the work. And that is why the preparation has been so intense. That is why your system is so selective. That is why comfort was removed before clarity arrived. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to be exact. So if this message didn't just resonate, but confirmed something deep inside you, don't let it pass quietly. Comment this phrase below as a declaration, not for me, but for yourself. I was never hiding, I was preparing. Until then, remember this. Your home is your temple, your silence is your training, and your discomfort outside is proof that you were never meant to be ordinary.